Hi guys, I'm Shmee, hello to you and welcome back to the channel where today I'd like to talk more about the big announcement from my previous video, the surprise news that I've sold my Porsche 911 GT3. Now I know this was a big shock to many of you. I didn't even expect the reaction that you guys had. So I'd like to answer some of your comments and questions about it, tell you the main reason why I sold the GT3, and also go into the future of the garage and discuss a little bit more the topic of car flipping. I think a lot of people don't quite understand what that means, so I'd like to explain it in more detail. Now today I've popped out to visit Apex at the Nürburgring, so I'm inside the barn with the Team Schirmer M4, their 991.2 GT3 RS, and also the 675 LT Coupe. But let me take a seat and let's get talking about why I sold this car. Can I just say a massive thanks to you guys, because the channel's just reached 1.4 million subscribers. Now without you this wouldn't be possible. Your support is hugely appreciated, and of course I believe it's important that I'm completely honest and open with you. So when it comes to a story like this, I've seen tons of speculation, gossip galore, assumptions as to what has to be the secret or hidden story that I haven't revealed. But you might actually be slightly disappointed. It's something a lot more simple than you might initially think. Basically, the reason I had to say farewell to the Porsche GT3 is due to the inbound Ford GT. Now, if we rewind a couple of years, all about the Ford GT here, back to when the allocations were first given, you had to apply for a car and they picked 500 customers around the world who would eventually receive them. In the UK, I believe that there are about 10 in total from this first round of allocations. So it's something particularly special, but when I received mine, there was no indication as to when the car would actually come. After that, there was then an announcement, a notification of your delivery window period when you'd received the car, and for me, that was given as Q4, the last 3 months of the year, in 2019. Next year, more than a year away to the end of next year. So that got me thinking, what could fill this gap in the meantime? Now, I had owned the Porsche Cayman GT4, a fantastic car. I had it for about 15 months. I did 10,000 miles in it, and I thought, why not try another Porsche? Why not try a 911? Now, an interesting thing here is in the UK, to get a GT3 allocation is almost impossible. Completely sold out, oversubscribed, and I think it's similar in the USA with people paying kind of over sticker price for them. But in the UK, if you have a car, if somebody flips it straight away, there's a massive premium on it. Basically, it's almost impossible to get one unless you're a really big Porsche customer. So for me, that was a total no-go. I had no chance. But as I was spending a lot more time in mainland Europe on the continent, especially as you've seen based out in Germany, in Frankfurt, it got me thinking to ask in different dealers, because you can move cars across borders around Europe more easily. And I just so happened to be in Amsterdam for the start of Streetgasm, popped into Porsche Centrum Amsterdam in June of last year, and they had a few allocations available. So I could have bought 3 or 4 cars on that day, I think, and obviously that meant I chose to sign my name on the dotted line that afternoon, pay a deposit, and order the car. Since then, of course, you've seen the car being spec'd, being built at the factory, going to the Porsche exclusive manufacturer to see some of the special parts going on, the door sills, the interior features and details, and of course it's painted in a PTS colour to start with. And then we got to March of this year for delivery by helicopter at Porsche Centrum Amsterdam before taking the car to the UK to go to Topaz for paint protection film, and then I did the Ringwing Ting tour to bring it from the UK with my other cars here to the Nürburgring for Car Freitag weekend, the opening weekend of the Nürburgring season. What I didn't know was that a few weeks later I would get a phone call, and that phone call came from the Ford GT concierge. They were telling me that my order window was going to start and the car would arrive this year, 2018. The end of the year, it has to be said, but what that meant was that I had to engage my brain and work out how to actually afford the GT and what was going to have to go in my garage. I know this seems like a fairly trivial thing, but the GT is a surprisingly expensive car. If I had known what the price tag would be when I originally put in an application for an allocation, I don't necessarily know that I might have done. Of course, the story has built up for me. I was there when it was revealed in Detroit. I was there at Le Mans when they were victorious in 2016 on the 50th anniversary. I've had test drives in the car. I've met tons of the drivers for the two WEC teams that are racing them from the UK and the US. So the story is huge for me. I feel very, very connected to the car, but it does cost £550,000. That's a significant step up from cars like the 675 or the GT3 or the GT8. So it meant I did have to start thinking about how I would actually pay for it. And not only that, when you confirm the specification, as I did a few months ago, you actually have to pay 50% of it up front. Cash has to be paid, done. This gave me a problem because I'm not going to lie. Although I'm lucky enough to drive some amazing cars, money is not unlimited. I don't have access to infinite funds, and I didn't have enough to pay for the GT without something going. So it got me thinking, look at the cars in the garage, which one am I going to have to let go? Now, the original thinking was that the GT3 would never be a permanent car. You hear me talking about permanent cars all the time, the likes of the 675 LT and the Aston GT8 and the about to arrive Heritage Focus RS. Whereas on the other side, cars like the AMG GT R, the GT3, the Red Edition RS are at some point going to be sold. I'm open about that. I'll use them, I'll enjoy them, I'll make cool videos for you guys with them, and then at some point they will find a new home. So if you look at my garage overall, 675 LT, no, don't want to sell that. The Senna is coming. I want the LT and the Senna together in the garage. That's a topic for later, by the way. Then you get to the Vantage GT8. That car grabs my heart like nothing else. The noise, the feel, the heavy steering, the clutch pedal, the old school style, the sound of it, not going anywhere. Heritage RS, they've flown up in value. Some of the adverts right now for those are ridiculous, but again, it's a very special car. I was lucky to get it, and I'd like to have that next to the Ford GT when it arrives in the garage. So again, not going to go anywhere. Then we've got the AMG GT R and the 911 GT3. Now the GTR, I've had some fun with Rentec, and I'm actually having some more fun with Rentec. So stay tuned in the coming days, tuned literally for that, for what's coming. I didn't really want to get rid of it. I use it for everything. It's a great long distance car. It's a very exciting car to drive. It's a very, very fast car. It's a very practical car. You can take it to the shops. It's the current flagship sports car from AMG. Yes, something might come above it in due course, but not yet. And the amount I drive it and the amount I use it, I really bond and gel with the AMG GTR. You know, at the end of the day, it's actually faster here at the Nordschleife than the GT3. Porsche's official time for the GT3, 7 minutes and 13 seconds, and Magazine's time with the AMG GTR, 2 seconds quicker, 7 minutes and 11. And it's a car that's really quite exciting to drive hard. It's not quite as precise as the GT3, but I did actually do a full video with this topic. Ultimately, I love it. And that basically meant, here I am with the GT3. Now, obviously, I didn't want to say goodbye to it. If money was unlimited, I'd have kept it. And believe me now, I've spent a long time trying to work out if there was any way that I could keep the GT3 in the garage, but I've not been able to make it work. I just have, nothing came together to make it possible. So I had to say farewell to it and put it for sale, and it actually sold almost immediately. Went into the garage, gone. So before the video even actually had time to go live, the car had been bought, which is, I guess, great. It means the car was spec'd quite nicely after all. Talking of which, the spec of the car. Loads of you have said, why would you personalize a car so much if you're eventually going to sell it? Well, it's also part of making the car a really nice spec overall. You know, with the matching harnesses to go with the paintwork, it's quite a desirable object to a person who wants that car. Yes, the color isn't everyone's taste. I understand that. If we all had to agree on a color, every single car on the roads would be black, and that would be boring. So we don't go down that path, especially not if you know my garage. And equally, loads of you have asked me about the custom illuminated Shmee 150 door sills. Now, that was a bit of fun to do on the car. Porsche Centrum Amsterdam suggested it. We just decided why not. It's an entertaining video. It'll be fun to see them at Porsche exclusive manufacture. So when it comes to the new owner, I sold the car with the sill plates installed. He can choose to remove them and replace them with stock sill plates for not a great cost, should he wish. So that's up to him. I think at the moment, actually, they're still on. He made contact with me, which was awesome. And I think they're still there. Maybe they'll stay there, maybe they won't, but it doesn't necessarily matter too much. So in the time that I owned the GT3, it might only have been 6 months, but I think it definitely had an accelerated lifespan. Most GT3s would probably cover the almost 10,000 kilometers that we did with the car in about 3 years, not 6 months. And don't forget, in that time, it did sessions here at the Nürburgring, on the Nordschleife, on the GP. I did a number of days that I didn't necessarily film. You've seen a couple of the days, but not every time I brought it here. And remember, it's a full day outing to come here and do some laps. where I have a pretty busy schedule in lots of different countries, so I didn't really have as much time as I expected. It's also been on road trips. We took it on the Where Schmee tour down to Italy, across to the south of France, to Monaco. It's also had blasts on the Autobahn. It's been used as a daily car around Frankfurt. So it's done just about everything. It's also been to London, of course. My dad's driven it, my girlfriend's driven it, friends have driven it. Everything that a car normally gets used for is kind of done. And that's an interesting thing for a car that I mentioned, and I appreciate this is perhaps one of the controversial topics because I said it didn't grab me in the way that some of the other cars do. And I think to many people, the 911 and especially the GT3 and maybe the GT3 RS are cars that people really aspire to. You know, they are the more attainable sports cars, not necessarily supercars. And that's a hard one to really explain, but that comes down to the experience living with the car and actually using the car and how it fits into your life and what you do with it and what you've got time to do with it. So it's quite a unique thing. It's down to each person what they like more, and that's why the GTR suits me just a touch more. But in this time, you know, I've used the car for just about everything. I don't think anybody can really say it wasn't driven. It went to events, it did convoys, it's done just about everything. I might not have done all 10,000 kilometers. I did try and work it out. I think I did about 8,000 of those. Other people, of course, my friends driving it. As I said, my dad took it on a short drive as well, a little road trip. So it got used in just about every way a car could use. I didn't just take delivery of it, stick it in a garage, do no miles and sell it, which will bring me on to the next topic. And that is car flipping. Firstly, what exactly is car flipping? It is literally when you buy a car with the intention of making money. That means you won't own it for long, you won't do many miles on it, it's a limited edition car that you're able to get an allocation for, and then you flip it on to the next guy and make a profit. Now, an interesting thing with the GT3 is the difference between different markets. Like I said, in the UK and US, completely sold out and they trade at a premium or over sticker price. In Europe, they actually depreciate because you can just walk into a dealership and buy one. So it's not quite like getting a GT2 RS or a 911R or something like that, where they're in massive, massive demand, and therefore Porsche would strike you off if you sold it and did something, you know, that they didn't like. But equally, flipping cars means you don't really drive them, because if you put miles on, the value does this, especially if you do 10,000 kilometers in 6 months. Believe me, if I hadn't driven the car at all, I'd have been able to sell it for a fair chunk higher. As it was, I lost an awful lot of money on that car, but I don't necessarily mind because I got the experience, I got to make some videos, and hey, I got to own a bright green Porsche 911, which was a pretty epic experience overall. So that balances itself out. But I think in this case, I don't really think anybody can argue realistically that I flipped the car. And I hope Porsche don't have a problem with that, because 10,000 kilometers, guys, I used it, like I said, for just about everything you could do with it. Now, another thing I didn't mention is time of year. It's now towards the end of summer. The Nürburgring closes soon. Track days, especially in Germany, don't really happen so much. It's got summer tires on it. Here you have to have winter tires to drive it in winter. So what's the point in me keeping that car when I'm not going to use it for the next couple of months? And then next year, the garage lineup is going to be, well, a little bit crazy, because obviously the LT, GT, the Senna, and at some point the TVR Griffith is going to arrive as well, I think later in 2019. So I'm a little bit sport for choice for cars that I drive on the track. And of course the red Project Focus is becoming a bit of a track weapon as well, and it's in the work that we're doing with it. So the GT3 felt to me a little bit like, where I use it, I'd probably prefer to be driving the 675 as the kind of warm-up car for doing some laps on track with the GT and the Senna. But equally, I am very, very lucky with the amount of track days that I get to do. And I'm sure you see this in the video. I was writing out the number of track events I've been on this year alone with manufacturers in different cars, and the list is pretty extraordinary. I've driven, Senna, 720S, 488, GT2 RS, GT3 RS, manual GT3, new Vantage, C63S, and Urus. I can't even think what comes up. I've got race car things coming up. I've got a couple of very exciting videos to come up in the coming days with new track-focused cars as well. So I get to do a lot of track days, more track days than I ever actually expected I would end up doing. And as a result, it means I'm less keen to take my cars to the track, because what's the point in taking the financial risk, the expense of tyres and brakes and usage, when you can drive someone else's, which I guess is a lucky position to be in. So the GT3 did do track outings, but you can kind of see how all of this came together. The main reason, the Ford GT, needing to pay for the Ford GT. I know some of you would say, give it up, don't take the GT, but I'm sorry, that's just not on my agenda. I'm definitely getting the Ford GT. So something had to go. And with the things I've got coming up, with what I want to do with the AMG GTR, with taking it back to Rentec, the GT3, I suppose, was the car that drew the short straw. It wasn't intentional. I'd have liked to have kept it for another 6 months or a year until the GT arrived, but obviously I'm very happy for the GT to come earlier. Well, that's basically the story. That's kind of how it's worked. A few people have asked me, would it have changed anything if I ordered the car with a manual gearbox? Now, I don't actually think it would have, and if you look at my garage in total, the cars I have now, plus the cars that I've announced are coming, I'm going to have 4 cars with a manual gearbox and 4 cars with an automatic gearbox, so quite evenly balanced when it comes to that. And I think at the end of the day, the same factors would have come into play that meant that the GT3 was sadly the one that had to leave. I don't think it would have changed anything. Another thing people have commented about is, what about the future values? What about if it's the last naturally aspirated Porsche GT3? Now, I think this is a big topic in general. Personally, I believe that this bubble we're in terms of cars and as investments is going to explode and it's all going to fall apart, and that people should only buy cars if they want to own them, drive them and enjoy them. It's a dangerous, dangerous game with the number of limited editions that are coming out, the number of last special this, special that potentially the cars that aren't the really limited and special cars are going to fall by the wayside. And if you look at the GT3, I don't know the production number, but it must be like 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 of them. And when they're building that many cars, plus the GT3 RSs, plus the .1 GT3 RSs and GT3s, and the 911Rs and the GT2 RSs, how many special 991 generation 911s can you have? That bubble has to kind of finish somewhere. So I don't personally believe in the future value as much as many of you guys have perhaps said so in the comments. I think a lot of people have said I'm crazy because it goes up. Well, like I said, here in Europe, they sadly go down. Like I said, that's not necessarily how it was planned, but that's the complete honest truth with you guys. If money was unlimited, I would keep the GT3. I'd probably still have my Vanquish and my FF, or maybe I'd have a Lusso, but unfortunately, needs are what they are. I spend far too much of my money on cars. I probably don't set the best example, and I'm sorry for that, but I love them. I get to create all of these videos about the cars, the different manufacturers, the different experiences, the different places I get to visit and drive, and to get a full feel for the entire market, which I think is quite important, to know what it's like to buy a Porsche 911, to know what it's like to buy a Mercedes-AMG or a McLaren or a Ferrari or a Lamborghini one day maybe. I've not owned a Lamborghini to date, of course. And yeah, that's more or less it. An honest answer as to why I had to say farewell to the GT3. So there we go, guys. Is that what you expected? In any case, a big thanks to Apex for letting me come hang out with them today. The weather outside here at the Nürburgring is pretty rubbish. But yeah, there we go. It's farewell to the car for now, but more exciting things are right around the corner. Watch this space, guys, and I'll see you very soon. Cheers.